get started. If others join us during the call, great. On to this week's webinar from NUS. This webinar. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm just going to deal with Spanish. To this webinar this week. You join us live from Cardiff University Students' Union. My name is Jamie Scudamore, I'm Membership Manager at NUS, joined by Ian Pascal, to my left, former Director of Insurance, and the person for this conversation is the Chair of NUS's Membership Commission. Through headlines of the report and to answer any questions that you have. We've done a sound and video check. Those that are new to webinars, there is the function that you can see in between the video screen and the chat box. There is a hand up, there is a tick and a cross. Those kind of like status updates. So if at any point I ask you your view on something as a group, or if you need to kind of stop us at any point, then you do. You can also talk to us via the chat box. That's fine. In a moment, I'll hand over to Ian, and he'll go through around 15 minutes or so. And once he's done that, we will use the majority of the time to answer your questions. So hopefully, with the report published on Tuesday, you will have a chance to at least have it through, and I will hand over to Ian.
And well, for us, a sunny, cold Cardiff, you can see any of it, we're in a darkened room at the moment. I'm assuming that people will have read at least the executive summary of the report that was published earlier in the week. I'm going to run through and pull out some of the main themes of the plan, but part of the purpose of this webinar is to take questions and hopefully that will get us into a little bit more of the detail as we work on through. As Jamie had already said, I was asked to chair a commission with 3 other panel members to look at what has been a very thorny issue for the whole student movement for a very long period of time, about the way the organisation is funded. You'll see some of the themes from some of the research that was done on the back of this, but the 4 people of the commission were given access to people within the student movement, a lot of data, from, particularly from NUS, but some data also supplied through surveys from its members from student union. So it was launched by Rachel at the end of last year. There's been a lot of work that's taken place in that time. Yes, I believe we're hoping that the connectivity to the student movement is enough to give them some empathy for what's going on, but that we were disconnected enough to be able to bring a different perspective than might otherwise have come. There are an awful lot of people really engaged. A lot of this detail is in full research and full report that start on NUS Connect, but we spoke to a lot of people within the student movement, a lot of student officers, a lot of staff. 90 student unions participated in the collection of the research, as I said just a moment or 2 ago, and provided a lot of data on what it spent its money on, where it got its income from, and so on, that we were able to put into this particular process. One in the report that is to some of the is quite out and has a significant impact on the Commission doing the work. You'll see two scales on the graph. One is covering the size of block grants for individual student unions, starting on the left side with those that get the largest and further out to the right. And the graph shows the percentage of block grant that is paid by unions. And that is an extremely regressive model. And undoubtedly is a source of difficulty in fairness of dissatisfaction within movement. It's by no means the only that we found, but it's one that, through a lot of the evidence that was given to us through the meeting face-to-face and in the surveys that were treated to us. This calls out specifically what members of the US student unions value in being part of this body. And you get the two on the left-hand side, the two that were most commonly ranked within that particular service. And perhaps not surprising, given the nature of NUS, were the big part of the collective. I think that the big part of something bigger and likely to give more influence and power in matter to students. Also, kind of connected to that, the national voice that comes through from that through NUS. There's some also very strong attachments to NUS through the commercial trade provision of the NUS card, the Purchasing Commission, and so on. So it's clear even from this particular slide that there's kind of two areas that we've seen as the principal reasons why organisations want to be members of NUS. Of a lot of the analysis that came through. I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but values is important. It's something that came through very strongly to all of the members of the Commission, that NUS is representing a movement that has values, and representing that movement that needs to make sure that it properly was done. On the board, there's been lots of things that are starting to give a hint of some of the criticisms or challenges that are facing the movement, making sure the organisation is properly accessible to many of its members who can be, that it takes are transparent, that people understand them, not necessarily always agree with them, but at least understand how they position relative to other decisions that are being made, that disciplines in place to make sure that the organisation is doing the things that it ought to be doing in a clear and fair way. And finally, the last word I pull out there is efficiency. Making sure that the organisation is effective, certainly some kind of concern. It's connected to a lot of the other words in this word about the organisation is as effective as it ought to be and has the kind of efficiency that it needs to make sure we get the best results for its membership. Just wait. Slide through. Recommendations drawn on the back of that kind of, like I said, I'm rushing very quickly to kind of get to what really what is being said. But it was the considered view of that a new settlement was required for the organisation to make sure that it gets the right kind of buy-in from its members there is an absolute focus on delivery to members, and in terms of then yes, student unions to make sure there's proper delivery for the students that they represent as well. And with the value slide you can see, we believe that the offer should be spread around two distinct, distinct areas of voice and national representation, and then of development and enterprise, which pulls together a lot of the work that is done directly with student unions. For each, I think this is one of the things, again, that came out quite strongly in the view of the evidence that for any organisation to do something well, it's got to be clear about what it is trying to do. It's got to have a strong sense of purpose. It's got to be clear what it's actually trying to do. It's be able to measure properly outcomes from that in order to make sure that it is in what is expected of it, and it needs to make sure that everybody understands how the money's flow within this. The last point I refers to all of that, and the final one really is one of governance, which, irrespective of what you do, you need to make sure that people responsible for delivery challenge on whether the delivery they're given is as effective as it needs to be. Those two in turn, first one's about around voice. Make it obvious to all of you what that means, but obviously, I stated the advancing student interest, creating universal benefits for students by making education and society better. We're extending cooperative campaigning, policy influencing work, and I think this is all parts for voice in particular. It's a little bit easier to understand and to make work on the development side. But and deliver voice to students requires the same kind of effectiveness it does if there's some kind of commercial output on that. And there it has to be clear in our view on voice. We decide what we do. How we make sure that we prioritise what we do. We encourage discussions on issues on understanding what's not done in voice, because people make better decisions generally, make relative rather than absolute decisions. But it's extremely important, this part of this, because there are rigorous tests of value within as well, and that will flow through in the government activities that then flow through from that. This balance on this particular one is obviously this is working specifically for students, and the activities need to be governed by diverse representatives of students themselves. But the voice, I mean, it's not for us to decide what any particular funding level is. And I'm sure being subject of a lot of discussion within the movement, should it choose to take some of the recommendations of this commission forward. But certainly recommend a much cleaner system of funding, where we refer to the slide that we saw at the very beginning, where the different percentages of grant were applied to this are difficult to justify, and we believe that the right thing to have consistent percentages applied right across this, with some kind of lower level at an end of it. Now, where that is, there's 3 blocks on this particular chart, 2%, 3%, 4%. What could have been NUS? It was one fund. It's debate not just about cost, but it's about what is gained in return. Certainly the feeling of the Commission is to be possible to create an NUS that's effective in this particular space with an tuition fee of 2.5% to 3.5%. If it was down towards the bottom end of that scale, then that would mean a significant return on spend by NUS. I don't think that people should particularly get hung up on that at this moment, because I don't think that's really where you need to start in this debate. The also 2.5%, 3.5%, most of the student unions would be paying less than they currently are. I think the real thing in the first instance needs to be that we want NUS to do to us. How do we ensure that that is effective and efficient? And then what are the various activities that we need to fund to do that? And it's then a kind of iterative approach process that needs to be thought about to come up with some kind of settlement that people can buy into. This is guide of the organisation. In the same sense as voice needs purpose, it needs to be effective, it needs to be well run. It's to strengthen student unions as well-resourced and democratic organisations who in turn then are looking to bring benefit to students as a whole. Especially, it is a portfolio of cooperative enterprises and programs. Some of that we're putting into this particular area are things that you would recognise as part of NUS services, social activities, but also some of the suggesting around and other development activities, not necessarily BC, that aren't necessarily commercial things. But we feel that the kind of, by bringing them together, some of the disciplines, ensuring that they're effective, that again, also the resources that are deployed on them will be brought to bear on some of those activities. So the effectiveness regarding this side of the organisation as much as on voice. You mentioned around financial returns, but a lot of it might be around other values. But whatever it happens to be, but then be understood and quantified so that it is possible to then challenge whether delivery is effective or it's not, and for the organisation to be well leveraged. This side is, in a sense, a little bit easier than it is on the voice side. We believe that this organisation needs to work to surplus. Not necessarily everything within what it does needs to work to surplus, but whatever outputs are agreed in specific activity, they need to be understood so that they can be managed appropriately. And certainly one of the considerations in this space is, for future work, is how to ensure that all students get proper accessibility to the resources, the products and services that NUS is able to deliver. This is what we're trying to show how the unions work together. Feeding the unions between themselves, the NUS development enterprise side and the NUS voice side with its dependencies. They may share services which are administered functions hidden behind those things, but the front ends of the NUS development and enterprise and the voice side need to work in their own goals, their own plans need to be changed to have the right kind of outputs, whatever the outputs are that are agreed by the movement. And then with the right appropriate engagement with unions to ensure that the benefits that we're talking about on top of this slide flow out of this arrangement. We have a bit more of this in the report, a few areas of interest, which do with accessibility, effectiveness, efficiency, and so on. So those kind of themes need to be played out into these areas. Events of making sure that they are accessible to as many people as possible. Ensure that you don't get mission drift within the organisation, that anything that comes externally to the organisation is evaluated not simply on the basis of whether there's some money into it, but how it fits with the outputs that are expected, how it might compromise or complement the rest of the work of NUS and so on. And the last point really is one of good housekeeping, really, to tidy up the relationships, make the organisation more efficient, but also to help all its members understand the whole of the relationship and how things flow between NUS and its membership. So next, I don't estimate the amount of work that flows through from the Commissioner saying. There is a remodelling of the work and these things, and not least in to set where the settlement might ultimately rest. We've made some proposals on that in why that might actually happen. The other point that we really want to make is the significance of change and the implications for budgets and for planning and so on. We certainly don't say that the movement should jump too quickly into change. I think there will be some there'll be some kind of quick wins and some of the cultural changes and disciplines. That's all of that we think is important over time. But realistically, we are talking about a 3 to 5 year period to allow both NUS to reshape its offering and the student union members to do the same and to manage their budgets and so on as well. So it's now for student unions and NUS to decide whether and if to take forward decision-making structures.
Brexit. I've just got a quick slide up here, just to run you through some detail. As mentioned, the South is around 4 pages, and as many members of over NUS now, but over in that area on the site is a 70-page research document. So if you have any questions around neurology, what you want to have some reading, looking at all the things that feel free. I know it's just run through the next steps, but I guess there's some kind of practical things about when are those opportunities to be. So the main items on the agenda for next week, conversation events in Sheffield, but predict that obviously if some of these principles are taken forward, then this would become a nice of a mobile major events over the next couple of years. Clearly, any decisions, any of the big decisions on this would have to come through our decision-making structures, so things like national conference, etc., would be involved. You can email me at any time in between those events, as the staff member supporting this menu website if you want to talk about any of this work. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing these slides, and we're going to open this up for questions. So just give me 1 second while I do that. So whilst we were talking, we already had one question in. That was from Rob. The question was, does this include phrases that they negative qualifiers before? This is referring to the chart which laid out what people value. Yeah, that's fine. So it's about the word power. Sorry, it's about the word power.
If it means, it doesn't say we're not very accessible, it just says accessible. I mean, I think in the word accessibility, which we pulled into that space, there was a theme from quite a number of unions that they found it difficult to access NUS, and therefore it wasn't lots of complimentary thing is accessible. It was negative. It was the reverse. Having said that, there was an awful lot of complimentary comments around good accessibility. The kind of takeaway from the overall theme of research, it's clear that there's quite a large part of the mission that doesn't feel that can engage, that is set up for it to engage with it as well as it perhaps needs to.
Yeah, I think on that, the research reports we look at it, there are lots of opportunities for free comments around lots of different questions. Those are the things that would repair things on the right side.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if people want to get in their questions on the chat box on the right hand side, I can ask them directly to Ian. I'm going to ask a question to Ian to kind of take us right back to the start. When you are in the staff to come and be the commission, are you looking at the type of people that were to join your commission? What skills what kind of backgrounds are we talking about?
Yeah, one of the members of the commission beforehand, but I didn't know the other two, was Helene, who was a general manager. I knew as the general manager when she was at Brooks, perhaps 20 years ago, and since then I've seen her at various things, and she's been doing interim work around consultancy work around the country, and I know that she's been working at Kingston University. So she's got quite good results. Student unions, or very good experience at student unions from quite a lot of different places. She's done some work up in Aberdeen just before that as well. So that was Helen. Stephen had, I don't know all his background, but he worked within NUS doing some governance work with.
It's actually my trade, but in a previous life, chair of the democratic students. So he's very aware of a lot of sectors on democracy.
Absolutely, and that was actually quite central. We certainly didn't intend in the beginning to get into issues of governance. We didn't really know where the discussions would go. We were waiting for the evidence to come through. But it's pretty clear that if you're trying to change an organisation, so the certain things, and it helps to account in particular the way the governance structures do that. And it became obvious to us as our discussions went on, Stephen was very helpful to assist through this. But some governance structures didn't necessarily challenge outputs in the way that they ought to. And as a consequence, it is likely that the outputs weren't as good as they perhaps could be. Now, I don't want to make more specific, more point than that. I'm really to reinforce the one that if you're asking an organisation to do something, you need, and then people within an organisation to do something, they need to understand what they're supposed to deliver. They need to understand how it's moved, and there needs to be processes in place to make sure that that's happening. If it isn't happening, it will mean that the individuals get into difficulty. It might be then that you have some kind of challenge about what you're going to do, or the measures, or something else like that. You've got to have an important job with inputs and outputs constantly going on in the organisation, which governance is an important part. So it's very useful to that process. And one member of the commission was Karen Mallenby, who works for Mind charity, and they run what she called it, but it's effectively a federal structure. Mind shops, individual shops have their own autonomy to a certain level.
And loads of charities in their own right.
Yeah, that's right. Local charities, and consequently, she has an understanding of the current membership model that exists within NUS, and has got experience of something that we were seeing and some potential solutions. Some seeing, and indeed, Mind is another values-driven organisation. So there were parallels there and things that could draw on to help the debate and discussions would occur.
And I believe that just last summer, Mind is off the back of a very simple process.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
Timing work. Okay. Have a quick look. At this point. Okay. No one has got any more questions, so I'm just going to double check that you can all type. Okay, and can get through, because Rob at the moment is asking me questions. So I can just at least acknowledge that they can use this chat box. I know that there's not a major problem with that. Very helpful. Thanks, Rob. Thank you for the compliment. Okay, so I suppose I should just look at some of the questions that have been coming into us in the last few days since the report. The report talks to different things, about almost a separation of activities and enterprise activities. And I think the point has been made by some colleagues movement that they wouldn't want them having being in nature. What are the Commission's kind of thoughts on that? Is that something considered? Are there ever things in conflict?
Well, the governance structures need to be worked through properly on this. But even within voice, well, if you have a look at the development side of it, then that's not one thing. And that's true in the voice side as well. And it's an umbrella of activities that needs to be considered in a particular kind of. We believe that this is the best way of thinking of the map, but there are massive interdependencies between the two. And as a single organisation, it's trying to, the single purpose to the whole organisation, which is seeking to bring benefit to students through student unions in one side and directly in other circumstances on the other side. So there's any kind of intention of trying to separate out functions, but it's trying to clarify the offer to this is what NUS is, and this is what it does, and this is the outcome it's trying to get, and this is how it's measured. And the difficulty is, if you just bung everything in a pot, then in the same kind of pot, then it's very insightful and to not get as effective as an organisation as you were. So it is not the Commission to create two assets, or really to completely organise for the organisation. It's about trying to make sure that resources are tied together in a way, resources are made, disciplines are attached to each of the activities. They're then clear to the members and to all of the students as well, so that people can be more supportive of the settlement than they currently are. Because one of the things that we saw, we talked a little bit about something about some of the things that have come through. A lot of the concern about effectiveness, efficiency, and accessibility, but not all of them are real. And they come because people are able to pick anything from anywhere and tie it across. And this must be subsidising this, and this must be subsidising that, and this kind of way. Some kind of clarity when you're working in the voice space as opposed to the development space where you're supporting students, I think would be helpful to that kind of dialogue. It's a good message, I think, to carry, albeit that there's a few pitfalls that sure we're going to fall into in preparation.
Thanks. I'm just going to read out a question we've got here. Do you think larger, well-resourced students should be doing NUS in this regard from your own assessment? I think their membership services from campaigns and voice.
I wouldn't is what I think they should do. I think anybody running any kind of organisation has to be. So the student movement, probably thinking, what are we trying to achieve? How are we doing on that? And could we deploy resources in a different way to get a result from that? So there's a debate and there's an agreement about outcomes. There's some kind of measurement to see whether these outcomes are replaced, and then there's some kind of governance that measures models and outputs and some of the real things. The truth is, this is just as true within the student movement as outside, is all this is changing all the time, and the role of leading any organisation is to anticipate and manage change, and it is what they have to do. So where that might go,
I'm just going to start for a second because the and research of Cardiff University students, the lights have gone off because we've not been for a little while. So you bear with me 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. And I suppose that what that question also speaks to is kind of I guess the clarity of offer that was discussed by the Commission. I think again it's a question that I think probably people would want to ask as well. You've got something that's fairly commercially successful, something like NUS Extra. Why would you use NUS Extra to pay for the voice on the other side? Why would we make that simple and just throw that all together?
I think attached to it. I mean, nothing is certain forever. There's an awful lot of options that you think are impregnable to change. And buying habits, merits, technique, all those kind of things change. and people are left high and dry. And I think you've got to be very, very, very careful when you are of an organisation. You've got a model that you think is robust and will stand the test of time. I mean, I've found almost enough to know some of the challenges that NUS had back in the 70s when it had a commercial model, and NUS itself through the 1970s had a travel company that went up, but almost brought the National Union there, where the National Union was dependent on something that it felt it could learn more than it actually could. So I think you have to, it doesn't mean that everything is a win for that isn't part of the core. You need a sustainable core that people are constantly challenging whether it's delivering what it needs to do, but it's being funded in a way that you can imagine is likely to see us through at least a decent number of years. I mean, nothing is, but then you use in from like NUS Extra, which has been a massive boom for the movement, to make sure that that at least is invested in sustainability. It's not empty revenue.
I suppose what this speaks to, and speaks to the question, is 20 years ago, the next institutions around the country that have thought that their beer sales would continue to rise for a long, long time. And obviously, in some of the places, you know, they've now spent that and grown up. Obviously, all that. Just checking our text box here. I don't think a question we had in yesterday was, does this mean that we're now talking about the options for the 4% as being modelled and the recommendation as being somewhere in the region of 2.5% to 3.5%? Does it mean that the Commission thinks that US in certain areas has grown too large?
But again, I don't think that would be for us to say. But I think that what we think should have just a good look at itself and say, what is it trying to achieve in this space? How are we achieving it or not? And the things it's doing. In a way, start to think about whether the resources could be deployed. I think parallel to that, and I think this is a good discipline for any organisation, is every now and again go base up and say, right, we've just been informed, received this, what organisation do we need to create for that? And put something in place, and then you can look at it and compare it to what exists. And I think that kind of process is likely to mean that some things that you currently do don't deliver in terms of the expectations of members and values and so on, don't deliver as efficiently as I might think, if you are properly, or as well as some other things. And it will cause you to reshape what you do. And certainly my experience tells me nearly always do you find that this kind of process, even when it's not driven from a perspective, it always means you get a more effective organisation, you can deliver more for less. So if you do that in parallel, as part of the commitment to settlement, then one of the consequences of that would be that the settlement would be lower than it otherwise would be. So that would then mean that clearly members are less than might do. And I think in going through that kind of process, and like I said, it would be a beautiful thing. So, well, look, we can deliver all these things for this much, and therefore settlement that. Does that feed into the people that are doing that? You know, be happy with that, and be happy with the outcome. There's some back the other way, normally this process, we say, well, if you had this much to spend, how would that affect the offering? What kind of NUS do we want? So there's a process that needs to be gone through. But I certainly feel that the process itself will be organisation more effective. Certainly means that it will be lower than it would otherwise be. Hopefully, out of that, you will get people to be in terms of effective assessment, what's being done, recognising the fairness of what's being done, and recognising that whatever to the pot that they could run from. I mean, in the end, if you value it costs, and you sometimes really yes, that's fine. There's not parallel interest or one-sided and so on that everybody compares to. I think there's a process here that I think would do the movement good, not just in terms of making it more effective and efficient, but I think it's more easy for itself to get rid of a lot of the kind of some of the things that people are quite pinned down exactly this kind of uncertainty on these. I think AS doesn't have anything to hide in this particular process and gets extremely well with information and this information. So we look at what it does, and I think that just needs to continue.
So what you're saying is it's about how much you do, it's about how effective that is, and what how you
always new models, new ways, and new challenges, and I think you start to force things into a process. If I proved about it, you can say, well, it was 10 things that we want to do. We can only able to do 7 of them. Then we debate about which ones we do. Now, if you want to be able to make that kind of relative call, you need to understand, you need to measure each one of them. It's nearly always that kind of process that organisations go through, but it is really one of the tools that will tell them at all. I think that I think a healthy process, the movement, and the movement will save money and will get better results.
The point you just mentioned there is quite interesting because, as you said, this while it's not really efficiency conducts a governance review, and that that as part of the recommendation you said that the governance review will take place over the coming period, as this work will require a governance review. One of the explicit recommendations that's made is that what the democratic model that the move comes up with needs to be able to prioritise what it wants in a time.
Yeah, the governance is about making sure an organisation does what it's set out to do. And so therefore it's got to start at the beginning, clear about what we expect, and have some kind of criteria of judging whether that happens. Perhaps every organisation works within limited resources, and then it has to find a way of being able to decide whether the resources is this or is that. So I think that kind of discipline for everybody within the movement to understand how cases are made for what is done and what isn't done, that needs a way in everybody. Not only make you more comfortable with what ultimately is done, but what actually will probably, well, certainly deliver better outcomes in that space as well.
Yeah, I suppose the kind of the last question from me is, as you evidence in the report that as you need to look at how it is, rather than just this kind of relationship that is a service provider operating individual student unions out there in the country. It was quite interesting how you picked up on the need for NUS to be at the bottom of the train. Environmental student unions, but also connect together and space, access way to be able to do that. And so there's some specific recommendations on that. But this is something that you, I think,
they do this and they do that, and this is the way that we deliver it and so on. Once you're really clear about what it is that you're trying to achieve, you have the right kind of disciplines in place to change whether doing those particular things. You explore different delivery models, and so one of the things that I think will play out in the development space is cooperative activity with the risk and reward that comes with that between student unions and the US. One thing this is NUS is that, I'm going specific to particular things, but some areas where it might well be more appropriate to run sometimes goals or stressful stuff within the movement in certain places and so on and so forth. And I think whereas people get carried out and say, well, this is NUS, this is in this project, therefore this needs to be done by NUS. It needs to be done by the student movement or the student movement. I think that's there. That means those people doing it rather than those people doing it, then that's something that we need to consider. So I think the models of cooperative engagement and how risk and reward shared and so on are all particularly need to be considered on the development side where in the US is working with student unions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ian, for running through the report and answering those questions. For those that are dialed in, Ian will be at Sheffield next week at Student Conversations, delivering a similar presentation and facilitating discussions there soon. As mentioned before, there's the research, the document itself, but also the document behind the place of evidence, Connect, so please go and have a look. And I think we just, thank you for all of Macclesfield. No problem. This is Sardis signing out. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.